what is the NCAA rules on transfers as it pertains to Joe's case?
Right. I can do that. Okay, no problem.
Go ahead.
Wait, we're now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great question. So the NCAA rule right now is that you can transfer once, which is called a one-time exception, if you go from school 1 to school 2. Any transfers from school 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 after that, you need what's called a transfer waiver, and there's a waiver process for it. And so, certainly in Joe's case, Joe got a waiver last year when he transferred to Oklahoma based on mental health, and the waiver process is very direct about what you can claim as the reason to transfer and what's not the reason to transfer more than once. And so the process is very clear, and the elements around the waiver are very clear as well. When it pertains to Joe's case, number one, he's already gotten a waiver last year to play at Oklahoma. And his situation has changed even more drastically since, due to his dad's health, since last December, and then when he decided to move back to Richmond and transfer to VCU. And certainly the decision to transfer to VCU was based strictly on his family. His family has their own business here. They run a 21-bed facility, transitional facility here in town for folks who struggle with mental health issues and chronic homelessness. And it was based on the doctor's advice, the medical professional's advice, that it'd be better for his family, for them to have help. So Joe made the decision to move back to Richmond to help his family. So where he is in his whole process is, there aren't many waivers that would be better suited than Joe's waiver for this reason. And certainly his mental health, and he's been open with it, and I give him credit for all in the world, that courage he has to talk about his struggles with mental health. But that and his family's need is the reason why these waivers exist. And if you can argue whether or not the waiver should exist or not, but if the waiver exists, as it does, it's certainly Joe's waiver fits right into where it should be. We made a really strong, compelling case, and we're certainly hopeful that the NCAA will look at this through the appeal process and realize it made a mistake.
This appeal process, how does it differ from the case that you made originally? And does a different set of eyes and ears listen to it? And how do you change your message to them in the appeals process?
A different set of eyes and ears look at it and review it. As it goes forward, Joe will be able to meet with the group that hears the appeal via teleconference. I don't know if we call it teleconference anymore, but he'll be able to meet with them on video and be able to not only to state the facts of his case, but always talk about himself and his reasons why. So we certainly think with the appeal as it goes, we have a very strong case with that, and as in supporting Joe for that. So I think as folks who can really understand it, and he can speak for himself on this rather than it just be a written appeal that doesn't have any human behind it. I think when they see the human part of Joe, I hope more clear heads prevail on that.
When has that been scheduled yet or not?
Not yet.
Typically, how long does it take?
So we'll have until the end of the month to get everything in, and we have some clarifying stuff as well from our medical professionals, our mental health folks here on campus, to make sure they understand the severity of what they're looking at when they speak with Joe, the appeals group. So we're making sure we cover all of our bases on Joe's behalf in that fact, and to get it ready for it. As it goes forward, and I think part of this is we look at this waiver process and how we manage these cases within the NCAA. It's a different appeals process than the enforcement process. But I certainly think sometimes when all these waivers have been denied, and they've all been denied. These waivers have been denied. We're holding adults to a lower standard than we're holding our students. Now, if we're in this for students, and the NCAA talks all the time about how important mental health is, and that's a deciding factor in everything that we do, you can't say that and then turn around and deny waivers based on they don't know if they agree with the mental health part of it, right? You can't. And there are guys that'll be coaching this year who willfully broke NCAA rules and major violations, and they get to coach this year. But Joe, who did nothing wrong other than wanting to come home and be around his family and support his family and put himself and his mental health first, he doesn't get to participate, but coaches who break rules do. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Throughout your history and your experience with the NCAA, and again, this case could be completely different, but just based on your experience, how successful are these appeals?
The ones that I've seen in the past, obviously, the NCAA staff has clearly given direction to folks of where they want this thing to be. And I've been on NCAA committees before, and the NCAA likes to say that the membership makes all the decisions, but the staff drives it. That's just how it goes. The staff drives how the committees operate, and that is how it is. So I think in the past this appeal would have been just pushed right through. Then folks within the business sort of complained that these were getting too easily done. But if we're going to have a process, we should stick to the process and evaluate things based on that process and based on the rules that we have in place. I'm all for the rules. This is not a VCU or anyone trying to be around rules, but the way the rules are being enforced is draconian at best and even somewhat deceitful. To say that we're going to have a waiver process and actually not grant waivers that fit within the parameters of the process.
My last question to any average person walking down the street, you explain the parameters of this case and his situation, and it seems like a no-brainer.
It does.
But it's not. How frustrating is that as an administrator? I don't want you to put words in Joe's mouth, but as a program and as an administrator of that program, how frustrating is something like this?
It's incredibly frustrating. It's more than anything as a human being frustrated for Joe. And I got to know Joe when he moved back here a bit, and then before he even started practicing with us this summer, I got to know him and know the quality of his character. And I admire him as a young man for being able to be as strong as he has been and going through all this stuff. I really do. So is it frustrating? It's incredibly frustrating. It's disappointing. Again, if we're going to hold the adults to a lower standard than we're holding our students, we're doing something wrong in our business, because we're supposed to be about putting the students first. And so it's incredibly frustrating is what we're doing. I'm hopeful that cooler heads will prevail, and folks will take a look at it, at not only the information based that we have here, but in having the ability to talk with Joe and talk through some of those things with him face to face or camera to camera, as it were. I'm hopeful people will see the same things that we all see in Joe. So do I think the NCAA is functioning at a really high level right now? I'd be the first person in the entire country in this business who thinks the NCAA is functioning at a high level with all the challenges that we have going on. But I do think there are good people who will see the merits of what he has in the appeals process, and I'm hopeful that is what comes through.
Joe has said that he sees a mental health specialist with the team. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about the resources that are in place, not just for the men's basketball program, but for all VCU student athletes in terms of mental health.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, we've really, the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've made mental health, even before the NCAA started talking about mental health being a priority, we've made it a priority. We have full-time people that have worked in our department that focus solely on mental health. We have a great relationship with the counseling service. Dr. Aziz, who runs the counseling service, works directly with our student athletes one-on-one, and he's got someone who works with him who also works with our student athletes. And we have tons of resources for our student athletes, whether they want to see their own mental health professional at home, or they want to see someone within the department, or even someone, if they're not from here, that we can hook them up with someone who's either not within the department or someone in our community. We exhaust all options to make sure our student athletes have the ability to be strong enough to ask for help. And we've done a ton of programming as well, and mental health awareness programming that we've done throughout the years to try to make sure we break down that stigma, to make sure someone who can be like Joe can be strong enough to say, I'm not okay, and these are things I need help with. And if more people did that, I think our world would be a whole lot better. But we certainly want to make sure our student athletes have that ability and that resource, and probably the most pivotal time in their lives growth-wise, right? Going from the time of being in high school, living it at home, to that transition time to before they go off and work. And you could probably ask the question too, why is it a big deal for Joe to sit out a year, right? Why can't he he's on track to graduate. And if he graduates in May, which we know he will graduate in May, and once he graduates in May, he can go off and then make money to support his family, whether he chooses to play basketball or not, whether he stays here in the community to work or not, to just help support his family. He should have that decision. that decision should not be made for him. So I give him credit, and I do believe we have all those resources for our student athletes to be strong enough to do that. But you have to have that foundation that he has, and we have that foundation in place for him here to not only make sure he's successful as a basketball player, but to make sure he's ready for May when he graduates.